The strain is over, but we're just getting started here on post-show recaps. It's the Strain Live. I'm Josh Wigler, and I am joined here today by the only man who enjoys the hard labor of killing vampires as much as I do. That's Antonio Mazzaro. Antonio, how you doing, my friend?
It's a hard labor day, Josh. I'm here to take a break from all the vampire killing and thank those who have killed vampires before us, or should I say large human rats. I'm not sure if they're really vampires. There's some debate about that. So
There's some debate. We're not really sure what we're calling these things.
Yeah, strigoi.
Strigoi, vampire, rat things that
large munchers, I believe, was referenced once at least. So.
Whoa, really? Did somebody say that?
I believe the silly fet said large munchers because he had, he calls rats munchers. So these are just large munchers.
He was like the killy fet last night.
I see what you did there.
Changing the hashtag already.
I like it.
But it's great. We've got Vasily Fett in the mix now.
Yeah, our band is, well, not back together for the first time.
And if you're gaining new blood, you're losing old blood. So of course, spoiler alert: if you have not watched The Strain yet and you are just stumbling into this territory, we also lost somebody last night. We lost the Mole.
Goodbye, Jim. We hardly knew you.
Goodbye, Jim. And I'm sad to see him go, only because I thought that he would get a much more gruesome death than that. I felt like he got off pretty easy.
It wasn't really well earned. It was good for F, and I think good for the silly Fett and all our characters to have the moments where they were debating what to do. But yeah, this guy deserved a lot more than that. Although I must point out, unfortunately, so far as we know, his wife is still alive. She's out of the picture. But I don't know if we're going to get any other connection with that or not. I don't think she deserves to take the punishment that he invited. But this is maybe all we're going to get out of the Jim storyline. This is maybe the end of Jim.
Well, maybe we'll get like a cold open next week that is just his wife getting assassinated by vampires, just to really rub some salt into that wound on his cheek.
Yeah, cancer pyres.
Yeah, that'd be pretty bad.
Yeah, no good. I don't want to see that. I feel bad for that poor lady, but we didn't see that loop get closed yet, so it's always possible that we will see it.
So we are live here on postshowrecaps.com. If you are watching along live, that's awesome. You can talk to Antonio and I using the hashtag PSRecaps. You can hit up Antonio on Twitter. He's at ACMazzaro, 2 Z's, 1 R. I'm at Round Howard, like Ron Howard, but a little bit rounder. And we're going to be talking about all things from last night's episode of The Strain, which was very straightforward. It was basically one storyline all the way through, which I think is the first time they did this. It was a bottle episode.
Yeah, there were just a very little, for a bottle episode, we were talking before we hit the air here, it was quite expensive. You had a lot of guest stars. We had just the one setting, but there were a lot of explosions, a lot of people in makeup staggering around a gas station parking lot. So it was an interesting bottle episode, but the story itself was pretty bottled up, other than we saw Icorse did escape and make his way to a different subway platform and labor a little bit with his injuries at the beginning of the episode there.
That was a kind of funny scene, I thought.
Yeah, he's getting too old for this S.
Yeah, it was like him doing his best Peter Griffin impression when Peter Griffin trips over the sidewalk and just rubs his leg for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting though. It's interesting because can you imagine if he were Peter Griffin?
Peter Griffin as Strigoi?
Yeah. I cut that guy's head off.
Strigoi Peter Griffin, does he put on like the extra weight as like a suit? Is that not real?
Hey Lois, I kind of want to bite your neck. I don't know what would happen. I think it would be interesting. The Family Guy, Simpsons always does the Halloween episode. So with doing the Halloween episodes, they get a little more leeway to do fun things like that with their characters. Family Guy, Simpsons ripoff, they've run a lot of gags into the ground. I'm surprised they haven't done something in that vein where they're doing some kind of out-of-continuity type episode where the characters become zombies or vampires or something like that.
I think it would be... I feel like there's a joke in there if they do the Strain Family Guy where Peter becomes Strigoi, he goes home to kill everybody he loves because that's what they do, and he turns everybody except for Meg, who he doesn't even try.
Because he doesn't love her.
Yeah, he doesn't love her. I feel like that's the joke.
That was pretty solid.
But Family Guy stuff aside, let's dive right into this episode. So we start right where we left off, which is in the subway. They're kind of recovering themselves. Abraham is uninjured. He's okay, but he's bummed because we've missed our opportunity with Eichhorst.
Yeah, and not only that, but the ominous, and we're going to pay for it pretty soon here, that is uttered out, is something that's very terrifying when you think about what they could get versus what they've already had. If it could get worse for them, this is really not going to be good.
It's kind of amazing that they get from Grand Central to Brooklyn with like almost no incident. That they're able to get that's not nothing. It's at least going to be like a 40-minute commute from where they are to where they end up in Brooklyn, and they managed to do that without any of the Master's minions on their tail. They wait until they're in Brooklyn, which I guess is probably good strategy because you're not going to be able to get a cab out in Brooklyn.
Well, and strangely enough, even though they didn't have an incident, their cab driver wants no part of waiting around for them. So despite the fact that they got a cab and they got there without incident, there's a lot going on such that the cab driver is ready to go the minute they pull up.
I think it's established at this point that taxi drivers on this train are douchebags.
Just on the train?
Just on this train, not in real life.
I wonder how Uber's rolling, or maybe they can take like a metro, like a car, like they can call a car service or something like that.
Yeah, I thought that they could do that. When they got really upset about the cab driver driving off, it's like, dude, you can just Uber that. You'll be fine. Yeah, but all of the taxi drivers are jerks. You've got the one who tells Abraham not to die in the backseat of his car.
Yeah.
You've got the one with Chief last time who decides to get out and start blasting vampires instead of driving away.
Yeah.
And then you've got this guy who just abandons them in the middle of the street for no reason, even though they're paying him good money.
Well, it's weird. Many of these guys might be of Eastern European heritage. Maybe they've heard tales of the Strigoi from their boobies. Like, who knows what's going on? But they
like overheard things in the backseat of the car, and they're like, "No, I'm not getting involved."
Lowercase t, time to leave. It's time to go. So
time to go.
and you're dropping somebody off in the middle of the night at a closed business that they seem very clearly intent to loot. So maybe you just don't want any part of that either.
Yeah, it's no bueno, as you like to say, my friend. It's not great, but of course they go out to Brooklyn because they have a plan. They want to get their hands on some ultraviolet lights because they think maybe this could be good. We should have some of these.
Yeah, F had said that direct exposure to sunlight kills 95% of viruses. Is this true? Is this science?
I don't know. I mean, I trust Dr. Goodweather. If that's what Dr. Goodweather is saying, I feel like we should believe that.
So he's saying sunlight, a.k.a. good weather, kills these viruses?
Wow.
I don't know. It's that hero complex he's got. I just need to expose them to my light, and they will be cured. Sounds like a cult leader.
Should we take that as a clue that F is going to kill 95% of the vampires on this show?
It's F and good weather, man. That's what happens.
Listen, let's not forget that this is a show co-created by Carlton Cuse of Lost fame. These guys, him and Lindelof, they like to drop these hints in there.
Yeah, so who knows exactly what that is. I found it interesting that sunlight kills 95% of viruses, so they want to get the simulated sunlight. They want the UVC light, but they get there to the business, and then there's no alarm. Something very odd is going on at that business.
Something is amiss. There may or may not be a very silly man who is looting this place at the same time. And of course, when we get to this place and F and Vasily Fett encounter each other for the first time, I'm just very thrilled. I'm very happy to see this guy finally in this storyline with these characters. I had no idea how it was going to happen. I kind of thought that maybe Vasily Fett was just going to walk into the subway station at Grand Central, but however it ended up shaking out, I'm very happy that these guys are together, even if it's a little bit serendipitous.
Yeah, well, I do like that they had the same idea. Fett knew that sunlight killed them, so he thought, I've got to go get some simulated sunlight. This is a good time for Fett. I mean, this is an idea that a doctor had. This is an idea that a doctor came up with because he knew about sunlight and viruses. And here we have this exterminator who we as an audience know to be somebody who's a little bit bigger than maybe his job title indicates. But these are people who have met him, don't know anything about him. So the fact that he independently had the same ideas, I think a really good character moment for him, shows that he is smart. He is thinking along the same lines as this great CDC doctor about getting the sunlight, getting these lights out, and really taking them out. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. I have a little more complaint about the serendipitous appearance of some other characters in the convenience mart across the street, which we'll talk about later.
Oh, sure, we'll get into that very soon. But yeah, so they finally cross paths, and I like it too because it's Vasily Fett has come to all these conclusions on his own. He hasn't had an Abraham Satrakian on his side to kind of guide him through what's going on here. He's just like, nope, these things are monsters. They're very scary. Apparently, sunlight is no good for them. I think UV lights will do the trick, so I'm going to go do that, and it's going to be every man for himself, and I'm going to run away with these 12 UV lights. It's very funny, and Dr. Nora has a good moment here, too, which is like, hey, by the way, you're giving us half of that right now.
Yeah, she really does pretty good. It's the first time we've seen some value from her to step up and do something independent of everyone else. And, he says, I'll give you 3 lamps, and she says 4, and what, Grandpa wants one? So he's already ripping Abe apart. I feel a little bad that he doesn't really respect Abe from the jump. And it's interesting because those two guys are just kindred spirits when it comes to killing these things. And I think we'll see that, and they come to grow pretty appreciative of each other pretty quickly. But from the jump, he's just sizing him up as Grandpa. I really like too where he says, "Say something so I know you're not one of them." He says, "You look like looters to me." And then they say, "Well, what about you?" He says, "I'm a looter." I love it.
He knows what he is.
I love the Silly Fett.
Silly Fett is great. He's my favorite character on the show, pretty easily. And the fact that he is now in the mix with the main action, I think, is a very, very good thing. So yeah, so he's got the lights. He shines the light on our friends. He passes that along, and immediately Abraham looks at this guy and he's like, "Oh, well, you've got gigantic arms, you are very tall, you are smart enough to know that you should be getting these UV lights. I want this guy on my squad. This guy belongs to me." And he's like, "Hey, maybe we can help each other." And then Vasily Fett says, I kind of work alone.
Of course he says that, right? Like, what cliche wouldn't be a cliche? That I work alone. It's interesting, though, because Abe's like, "I'm going to hang back here," and he hangs back, and he says, "These tunnels, you know them well?" So he's very encouraged that this guy not only is a guy with big arms and smart brain, but he has something to offer in that he understands the city, he understands the tunnels, he knows these maps, and Abe is just really all about getting him on their team. "Can I have your phone number? How can we get in touch with you? I think we could work together." He's just straight up like propositioning him. It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
I love it.
And he also says, how many of these vampires have you seen? He doesn't like the V word.
No, he says they're rat people. They're not vampires. Yeah, he doesn't want any part of calling them the V word.
So he's talking with Abraham. They're kind of feeling each other out. In the meanwhile, our heroes F and Jim and Nora, they are in the Quickie Mart. And they're gathering all of their stuff, and it turns out that there's somebody else who's familiar in this Quickie Mart, although a couple of familiar people.
There's a couple of familiar people. Unfortunately, we have the hacker who has set up this whole thing to fail. And of all of the Quickie Marts in the world, she had to walk into this one. And it's very interesting to me that we've got her together now with our troops, so they've got some kind of knowledge about the plan. If they're going to pump her for information, they're going to get something out of her. And that's a little frustrating to me that she just happens to be there, but such is life, I guess.
It's a little easy. It's a little quick that all of these people get together, but what are you going to do? I think, I'm happy to have the hacker on the team. I feel like that's going to be good for business, and it's done. No use crying over spilled milk. It was a little fast. It was a little serendipitous that all these people are in the same spot together, but it'll be okay. It'll be all right. There are things that bother me more in life than the hacker being in the Quickie Mart.
Yeah, and I suppose on a show where worms cause people to become 6-foot tongue, entire different body system, rat people, vampires, this is hardly the logical point that I want to argue over. So I'm okay with her being there. She's openly talking with her friend about how the ATMs are going to be a problem for the next few days. The networks are down. She's taking a little credit for that, and everything that we're seeing play out with the card machine not really working at the Quickie Mart, with the ATM not working, this is all her doing. So she doesn't feel that bad about it in the moment.
It's true. It's true. So we have everybody there, and everything seems to be going well until Abraham spots one of these things heading towards the Quickie Mart. And it's time to go to work. It's time to go to business. So he sees one of these things. He cuts its head off. It splashes against the window of the Quickie Mart. Everybody's kind of like, "Whoa! There's a crazy old man with a bloody sword out there." And he goes and he kills another one. And then one of them starts talking. One of them says, "You'll be sorry."
Yeah, it's not good. This is not. We got the sense early in the episode that they were going to pay for something, and there was going to be some sort of foreboding. And then, as you point out, they ride from across town to this medical supply house, seemingly without incident. So you get a feeling this might be the beginning of some of that payback that we had heard about at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, and so we're going to find out that that there's basically a caste system here with these vampires. That there's a structure to how this all works, and some of them are just kind of minions who just are kind of sheep that just wander around and do a whole lot of nothing. And then there are the ones who are obviously there's the master at the very top of the food chain, but then guys like Eichhorst are going to be the vampires who retain a little bit of their former selves. The master can make you that way. So that was pretty cool to find that out, to kind of get that spelled out on the show. And what we also learn here is that the master is able to speak through these monsters. He can basically do whatever he can control them. He can control them from a distance, and he can speak through them. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, he can speak through them. He can see through them. Obviously, it seems like when they are cut, he bleeds. He feels it. So this is something that makes some sense in light of what we learned last week, which was that if the master is killed, then they all die. So there's this direct symbiotic relationship between the master and these vampires, and he's probably getting stronger as they continue to feed and grow, which is something that is kind of terrifying considering what we've seen from him so far. So that's something that I think the show's doing a pretty good job building up and continuing to introduce the powers of the Master through not only the Strigoi, but through everything that we see them doing in the city.
So we get, the vampires are starting to really gather outside of the Quickie Mart. And, Vasily Fett, he's trying to help out Abraham. He's trying to kill these things alongside him. He's doing his best to really just be a beast and just decapitate the hell out of these guys. But it's not working out. There's more and more and more still. So they need to get inside. So they manage to, Jim gets to use one of those UV lights in one of his only cool moments in the show, and it's going to end up being one of his only cool moments in the show because he's about to die so soon. Jim gets to use the UV light against one, but at the same time he gets knocked down, unfortunately. And as he's knocked down, he is wounded, and once that happens, oh no, hope he didn't get a worm. But the moment that he kind of goes off and runs off to the bathroom to start looking at himself, it's kind of like, that guy probably has a worm.
Yeah, it's just a nick. He just got scraped when he fell down. It's no big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's really bad, and unfortunately, that's going to basically be lights out for Jim Kent pretty soon. We're going to get there. But everybody basically has to huddle inside of the Quickie Mart, and we get to the point where we're gonna need to hole ourselves in here because these things are coming after us, and they are specifically coming after our group. So we're starting to see that these things actually have some semblance of a consciousness. Something's controlling them.
Yeah, and they're waiting. They're not going to punish other people who aren't